Grace and peace, everybody. How are you guys doing this Wednesday evening? All right. Now, I know that y'all not used to me going live like this, back to back. But I got to get a lot of these live streams in because I am going to be traveling next week. So I need to try to do as many live streams as I can. All right. So that's why I'm trying to do as many live streams as I can, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to go live next week, especially not from the house. You know, I'm going to be out of town in the sunny city of Orlando. All right. But anyway, before we get into that, let's go ahead and greet the fam. We got Jamie up in the house. Let me see what Jamie says. Jamie says, what would you say to Augustine about rushing to baptize infants so they don't go to hell if they died without reviewing that saving sacrament? All right. No, I kind of understand what you're saying. You said that the spell correct. Actually, we want to get into that today because we're going to be reading some of what Augustine has to say about infants and baptism and all of that stuff. So we definitely going to be reading that. And that's why I think it's always best to read these sources instead of just saying that, hey, well, Augustine said this or this person said that. So, we don't get into it. Oh, he said receiving, not reviewing. Okay. Yeah, but I think that I understood what you were saying. Grace and peace, Hippolyta of Zion. Grace and peace. And then we also got brother Jerry Moore up in the house. Grace and peace, grace and peace. And listen, y'all go ahead, hit that like button and that notification bell if you guys have not done so yet. And I don't really expect too many people to show up tonight, because I know that this is kind of spur of the moment. I didn't really plan on going live. Well, I kind of was planning going on live with Random Catholic. We were going to try to finish a discussion tonight about icons, and he wasn't able to do it tonight. So maybe we'll be doing it like sometime next week. So we'll end up we'll probably end up setting that up like next week sometime. Well, actually not next week. I can't do it next week. I forgot. I'm gonna be traveling next week. So we gonna have to do it. Maybe the week after. All right. Maybe the week after, because I will not be here, and I'm trying to see how we go ahead and do this. Make sure everything is looking pretty good on my, on my mobile version. Oh, there we go. All right, cool. So everything is looking pretty good on the mobile version. I just like to chat. I just like to check, because what'll end up happening is that, stuff will be looking all janky and all of that. So I want to make sure everything looks good. He said, I really enjoyed the icon veneration stream. It was on point. Yeah, I mean, and there's so much more information that I could have brought out, but that stream was already like 3 hours long. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't want to turn it into a 4-hour stream, but we're going to continue to keep having those conversations about icon veneration, because, I am getting some pushback from some of these folks, and they're saying that, oh, you quote mining you're quote mining stuff you're not actually reading. It's just like, no, I'm actually taking time to read this. So that's why I like to pull it up and read through these things instead of just saying that, Augustine said, or this person said, and that person said, because that's what they do. The Orthodox and the Roman Catholics, all they're going to tell you is, well, such and such said this. They're not actually going to read what the person says. They're just going to say that, well, this is what the early church believed, and everybody believed this until the time of Luther, Calvin, and Zwingli. All right. So just like to answer your question about Augustine and the infant baptism and all of that stuff, that's why I'm just going to take time and read through what Augustine is saying. So therefore you guys can see it and hear it for yourselves instead of just taking my word for it, like reading Rainbow. You know what I'm saying? Let me see if I can play that sound effect, so therefore y'all don't, hear it like reading Rainbow. All right. Make sure I hit the right one. Grace and peace. We got my first supporter or member, I would say, up in the house. Og. Grace and peace. He is up in the house. Og makes fire good. All right. Let me see. Look like I missed one. Wait, how come Josh's comment isn't popping up? I don't know. Maybe Josh might be blocked. But I see he's popping up over here on the YouTube on the restream. Oh, I see why. Okay. Yeah. Josh is probably blocked. So therefore we're not going to read Josh. Not going to read Josh. So I'll just make sure I ignore him on the restream because he's not popping up over here on YouTube. So yeah, Josh, you could just go ahead and take a back seat, sit in the nosebleed section, but because your comments won't be showing up. It's not gonna be showing up. All right, but that's kind of weird though. Actually, I wonder can I also hide his comments here? But that's all right. I'm gonna let him ride for now. All right, I'm gonna let him ride for now. If he starts to conduct himself within a mature manner, then maybe I'll unblock him from YouTube. But if I see that he's manifesting on Restream, I'll just block him from Restream, and then I won't be able to see him at all. At all. All right. But anyway, as we get ready to get into this, I'm going to ask y'all a question live, only on YouTube. All right. And the question is Augustine correct? I'm sorry. Yeah. Is Augustine correct on original sin? So far, 71% of you all say yes, he's consistent with the Bible. 14% of you all say no, he misrepresents the Bible. No one says that he was both correct and incorrect. And 14% of you all say that you are not aware, but you are just listening. You are just listening. All right. Og says, my son's name is Joshua. Yeah, this guy here it was a guy named Joshua Kelm. And I think that he was blocked because even the comment that he just put up was already something that was just, it was just pejorative. Well, not really that bad, but, you can already tell that he's not coming in the spirit of wanting to have open and honest conversation. He just want to come in and argue and name call and all of that stuff. So, that's just stuff that we just don't have time for on this channel. Amen. Amen. All right, so let's go ahead and hop right into this because like I said, I'm probably not going to be on here that long. I'm just going to try to read a couple of more quotes. I'm sorry, a couple of more chapters from Augustine. Now, a quick recap, okay? So remember, there's a guy that's named Julian, and he wrote some material against Augustine. So he's basically saying that Augustine is this guy who's a Manichaean. He's a heretic. Original sin is false. It's a false teaching, etc., etc. So Augustine is basically firing back. And he's saying that, no, this isn't a false teaching. You're actually the false teacher because what you believe aligns more with the Manichaeans. You guys are saying all of this weird stuff about marriage that, people shouldn't get married and marriage is something that's a sin and this, that, and the third. And where we left off at with chapter 3, at the end of chapter 3, Augustine was saying that, well, since you say that what I believe, no one else believed, because this is what we hear from people like the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox, right? No one believed until, right? Or everyone believed this until a certain point of time. So the Orthodox, especially the Orthodox, because they hate the doctrine of original sin. They hate the doctrine that the Bible clearly expresses when it says that we are born with a sinful nature, that we've inherited from Adam because of what Adam did in the garden. So therefore, that permeates to all men, all women who have been born of a natural mother and a natural father. So the Orthodox Church, they hate that particular doctrine. And one of the reasons is because of a doctrine that they hold to called theosis. So theosis is this idea that you can do these really good works and you can work your way to being like God or having like this God-like status, and it gets kind of weird, it really gets kind of weird. Wait, hold on. Josh showed up. Hold on. So Josh ain't blocked. Hold on. Josh ain't blocked. Let's see what Josh had to say to see if we're going to block Josh right now. Josh says they hate original sin, but baptize babies based on the doctrine invented to spread the false practice of baptizing babies. Oh. Hold on now. Josh might be on our side. Hey, don't block him. Don't block him yet. Don't block him yet. We gotta see where Josh going. Josh, you friend or foe? Type it in the chat. Are you friend or foe? Because for some reason I don't know why his first comment didn't pop up. Oh, Matt says, Alton, you need to contact Reverend Joshua Shuping. The EO is gaslighting people and denying their own sources. Yeah, I think I hit him up. I think I hit him up a long time ago. This had to be a couple of years ago. And I wanted to have him on the channel. And for some reason, I think I was traveling like really, really heavy. And I think I didn't really get a chance to setting up a time with him. But I do need to set up a conversation with Joshua Shuping. Grace and peace, Scott. He says that he's almost reformed. Go ahead and come on home, brother. Go on. All right, let me see. Joshua says that he is against EO and he's a Protestant, but I'm not sold on original sin per se because it seems incompatible with credo baptism. All right, so wait, so you don't believe in credo baptism? Is that what you're saying, Josh? All right. I'm sorry. Wait. He says that I'm not sold on original sin per se because it seems incompatible with credo baptism. I don't know if I understand what you're saying there. I don't understand how credo baptism is almost, I'm sorry, that it is somewhat incompatible with original sin. I don't know. All right, so let's get back to this. Okay, so where we left off was Augustine was addressing Julian in these writings because we're reading against Julian. He's writing directly to Julian. And he said that, okay, Julian, you're making these claims that nobody held these beliefs or nobody held these views until a certain time. Like, I'm just making this up out of thin air. And he's just like, okay, as a matter of fact, let's start naming a lot of these people who held to this view, right? So that's where we left off in chapter 3. He was naming names and he was dropping receipts, all right? Dropping a whole bunch of receipts of the people who held to the view of original sin, people who lived before him, a couple of hundred years before him. Because remember, Augustine, he lived in, I think, the early to mid 5th century. All right, so this is around the 400s. So a couple of the people that he cited lived in the 100s and 200s AD. And he's just like, all of these other men, they believed this and they taught this. So if you claim that you're a Christian and you claim that you know the history, then how come you're not following what they follow? How come it seems like that I'm following more of what they say than you? So that's where we at. Now we're getting ready to get into chapter 4. All right. And like I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to read all of these because this goes up to chapter 9. And I think a couple of the other chapters that I read were a little lengthy before. So I don't know if the rest of these chapters are going to be lengthy as the first 3. So, but again, I'm only going to try to keep this at around an hour and a half. Let me see. I've been on, let me see, maybe about 15 minutes. I've probably been on like 15 minutes. So I'll probably say maybe around like 9:30, 9:45 or something like that. I'll probably end up, trying to shut it down around like 9:30, 9:45. All right. So make sure that we're not on here too long. But hopefully, if we can get through the rest of these, that'll be great. Because I mean, I don't have to, do this again or finish up some other time. All right. So cool. Let's look at this. All right. So this is chapter 4 and against Julian. Now, remember, he's still talking to Julian. And he says, go now and make objections about original sin. Disagree with them. Pretend you do not know what they say. And in view of so many great teachers who, after leading a most noble life and combating the errors of their times, most gloriously departed from this life before you came into being, as if you did not see them, while you are attacking me, and as if you did not know that they are being defamed under my name, when you insult them with impunity. So Augustine is saying that if you're attacking me, basically teaching what they taught, you're now attacking them, because all I'm doing is teaching what they taught. Way in my child, grace and peace. You see what I'm saying? So that is what Augustine is saying. He's just like, I'm teaching what they teach, and you disagree with me. So that means essentially that you are disagreeing with them, because that's what's happening with us right now as Protestants, because they'll tell us that since we are teaching what the church fathers teach or what they taught, the people that they told us to read, all right, the people that they told us to read, now they say that, oh, we're quote mining. We're not teaching it correctly. But then when we're asking, okay, when are you going to start teaching this stuff? Because let me let you in on a little secret. These people do not read their own sources. They don't read the church fathers. We actually do more reading of the church fathers over here than a lot of these other guys who are supposed to be the EO and Roman Catholic apologists. They don't actually take time to read this stuff and then try to bring out the nuances. At least with me, especially me, I try to bring out the nuances and what is being said. Because I'm like, okay, I don't agree with the church fathers on a lot of stuff. And because this is my ultimate authority. This right here is my ultimate authority. So whenever they veer away from this, then that's when I say, okay, well, I can't, I disagree with the church fathers on that. But at the same time, I could be honest enough to say, I don't think that I really want to put them in hell for holding a certain position or a certain view that was 12, 1300 years before my time. Zanzi, grace and peace, Zanzi, right? Let me go ahead and highlight Zons. There we go. Bam. So I can say that, okay, well, hey, I understand that they may have held a certain position because of the times that they lived. Some of these men, they had a lot of influences around them, especially the guys who lived in the East. You had all of these different Eastern religions. Some of these men grew up in pagan religions. Augustine himself grew up in a pagan religion. He grew up as a pagan, and then later on in life, he ended up converting to Christianity. Same thing with me. I grew up in a secular lifestyle, believing whatever I wanted, and then now that I'm an adult, by the time I got into my mid-20s or so, then that's when I started coming to the faith. So therefore, the way that I believed certain things coming into the faith was shaped by some of my past experiences. So therefore, a person like me, I can have a conversation with a person who was like a Black Hebrew Israelite, or someone who was in the conscious community, or someone who has kind of like this universalist atheistic mindset, because these are some of the ideas that I had. So I know where they're coming from. I can cut straight to the chase and say, no, you trying to tell me one thing, but I know deep down this is what you believe because I was there. So that's why when you talk to certain people, they may hold certain like eschatological views. Like some people are going to hold the more of like a dispensationalist, Zionist type view, especially here in America. You may go to like another country and that might be something that may be totally foreign to them. You might go to China or India or somewhere in the Middle East, and you may encounter Christians there, and you may start talking to them about we all need to bless Israel because, God bless those who bless Israel. And these people might be like, what the heck are you talking about? So this is how you have to read the church fathers. Oh, yeah, but, some of the church fathers venerated Mary. Yeah, but did they venerate Mary the same way that you did? They may have gave Mary high honor and high praise, but based on what? What was the climate like around the time that they lived? So that's why, and I think that Protestants are the best ones to look at church history because we take all of that stuff into account. We're not just trying to convert people and start making people just, appeal to the church fathers, because a lot of these Roman Catholics and Orthodox, if you notice now, they don't even really appeal to the church fathers like that. Especially when we're starting to bring stuff out like this. Because like I said, 3-4 years ago, that's all I heard. Read the church fathers. You don't know church history. To know church history is to cease to be Protestant, right? So Protestants don't do church history. They don't read into church history and any of that. So now that we read into the church history and we're bringing some of this stuff out, now all of a sudden, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, and you quote mine and this, that, and the third. So, But anyway, let's go ahead and get back to this. Let's get back to this. Augustine continues, I confess that I would believe you ignorant of the evil that you are doing and would attribute it to your imprudence rather than your impudence, that you dare pursue with hostility these shining lights of the city of God. I also got that as well, so let's go ahead and give myself a horn and hand clap. I also got those writings as well, the city of God. Actually, is this the city of... No, this is against Julian. But I also got his works, the city of God. We might have to read that one day. Lights of the city of God, which you ought to have followed with fidelity. I would believe, I say, that you commit this great crime in ignorance if I had not set forth a very clear account of the discussion of St. Ambrose. In that book, which you think or wish to be thought to have refuted. All right? Because remember, Julian said that, number one, nobody taught this. But in the last chapter, Augustine says that, bro, I was taught by St. Ambrose. Right? And not only that, he's telling Julian in a book that St. Ambrose wrote, you think that you have refuted it. He continues, or did you not read there that when the above mentioned bishop spoke of the virgin birth of Christ, he said, therefore, as a man, he was tempted in all things, and in the likeness of men, he endured all things, but as born of the Spirit, he established from sin. For every man is a liar, and no one is without sin except God alone. It remains true, therefore, that from man and woman, that is, through that union of bodies, no one may be seen to be without sin. Right? And this is what I was saying earlier. If you have natural parents flesh and blood parents, all right, who came through the lineage of Adam and Eve, which all mankind have come through, you are not without sin. All right? You are stained by original sin. But he continues, but he who is without sin is also without this kind of conception, right? If you did not there read these words of the venerable Ambrose, how could you undertake to refute the book in which they are written? But if you read them, why do you rage against me and criticize him first of all in me? Why do you strive to rend my name and without mentioning his name, make of Ambrose a Manichaean? He's like, bro. He's like, why don't you just call him Ambrose a Manichaean? Because if I'm teaching Manichaeism and I am teaching what he taught, if I'm saying I'm teaching what Ambrose taught and you're calling me a Manichaean, so therefore you need to call him a Manichaean as well. Surely you see with whom I endure your insults. You see with whom I make common sense, while without sane consideration, you strive to attack and overthrow them by calumnies. You see how ruinous it is for you to accuse such men of a horrible crime, and how glorious for me to be accused of any crime whatsoever with such men. If you have eyes to see, note it, and finally be silent. Shut your mouth. Close your mouth. Silence the Pelagian tongue. Woo, woo. With so many Catholic tongues. Shut your impudent mouth before so many venerable mouths. Yo, Augustine was talking spicy. He was talking spicy. So that's why people be like, Alton, I can't believe that you speak the way that you speak sometimes. No, sometimes we have to be able to stand on business against some people who are out here just, who are just making a mockery of the faith. Right? People who just come up with these really bad arguments. Got hip a lot of Zion laughing at this. Yo, Augustine was no joke. He wasn't playing around. If, like Polemo, you had entered the school of the Xenocrates, inebriated from late carousing, should you not be checked by reverence for so many holy men as he was by that assembly? Surely the reverence here ought to be so much greater as the greater wisdom is learned here. The countenances of so many venerable bishops are so much more to be revered than that of Xenocrates or Xenocrates. Alone, as Christ, their teacher, is greater than Plato, the teacher of Xenocrates. Indeed, I do not forget Memor, your father of blessed memory, who was joined with me in no slight friendship through literary pursuits, and caused you to be very dear to me. And when I saw in your books, not drunk with late carousing, but disturbed with mad wrangling, I brought you to be calmed and healed, not into the hall of a philosopher, but into the peaceful and honorable assembly of the Holy Father. So he's just like, yo, like I could have just called you out, bro. You see what I'm saying? I could have just called you out. I could have just let you have it, but no, me doing the right thing, trying to pull you to the side. What's that? What was that? Matthew 18. Hey, let's hey, hold on, brother. You just, according to your book, it seems like that you just saying some stuff that doesn't really seem like that is correct. All right. Let's talk about this in private. Let's talk about this. Let it be worthwhile, I pray for you, All right. So, and I want people to look at this part right here. After all of that, he says that he prays for the guy. And he's not saying that it's in a mocking way, because if I'm not mistaken, according to Augustine, I think in one of his other writings, I think he says that him and Julian were somewhat friends. And he was just now saying now that him and Julian had some type of close acquaintance. You know what I'm saying? He had some really kind of close acquaintance with the guy. So Julian is not some guy that lived miles away. It's not like how it is today, where you got people that's just miles away and they just talk all types of trash and mess about you, and they don't know you from Adam. It's not the way that this was going on back in those times. So back in that day, Julian and Augustine, they had a close relationship. And Augustine is dealing with some of the same stuff that we deal with today, when we know that there are some people who are walking with the Lord, and there are some people that may seem like that they're on the path, but then they kind of like slide away. And then now they learn something new, and then now they become your enemy based on how they misunderstand or misrepresent your position, especially when it comes to doctrines such as this, like original sin, you know? Because I know some people online that a few years ago, we used to, there were some people that I used to be cool with, and now all of a sudden we're just not cool anymore, because now they're more, Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic. All right. All right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to help Mr. Josh out. He says, all of this is a waste of time, Snow Job, because he gets to the point in chapter 5 and 6. So listen, I try to be patient with you, bro. So, it's cool. If you don't want to be here, that's fine. I'm just going to go ahead and help you out, man. I'm just going to go ahead and help you out. Because, my thing is that if you're not really willing to come over here and have a honest conversation, just don't show up. Just don't show up. You could just be somewhere else. You don't have to come in here trolling the chat. I'm reading chapter 4. Don't you think I'm going to end up reading chapter 5 and 6 as well? You think I'm not going to read it? You think I'm not going to read chapter 5 and 6? All right. You're trying to say that, well, you got to get to the point with chapter 5 and 6. We're going to read that. Look at this guy. Augustine misrepresents what it's even about, so the lazy who don't get to chapter 5 by his nonsense. All right, brother. So, well, it was nice knowing you. All right. It was nice knowing you, bro. And I mean, it's just as simple as that, man. It's just as simple as that. Again, you could just go somewhere else and watch another live stream. Don't even have patience. He already trying to get us to read chapters 5 and 6, and I'm like, bro, I'm reading chapter 4. Can I at least read chapter 4 first? Can I read chapter 4 first? And look at this. I'm gonna put this up. What did he say? He says, Calvinists love defending baptism. When have I ever defended infant baptism? But, these are people that they just want to argue online, y'all. And sometimes you just don't, we just don't have time for it. He says, you got rid of Kim Jong-il? Nah, listen, on this channel, I'm Kim Jong-il around here, all right? I told y'all, this channel, this is communist YouTube over here. I run this like a communist. If I don't want you here, you ain't gonna be here. I'm like, man. Anyway, Let's get back to this before we was distracted by one of these people that get so triggered when you start reading information. Folks get triggered when you read the information, don't they? Let's get back to what Augustine says. He says, look at them, as it were, regarding you, and gently and kindly saying to you, as we, then Manichaeans, son Julian, I ask you, what will you answer? With what eyes will you look at them? What arguments will come to your mind? What categories of Aristotle with which you wish to appear adept that you may spring upon us an ingenious disputer, right? He's like, bro, what you gonna do? You gonna bring up Aristotle, right? So you're gonna bring up all of these secular arguments to do what? To do what? To try to refute what I gotta say? What glassy edge or laden dagger of your arguments will you dare draw forth in their sight? What arms will not desert you and leave you unprotected? Or will you perhaps say you did not name any of them in this charge? And what will you do when they say to you, it would be more endurable if you tore our names to pieces with your evil tongue rather than our faith, by whose merit our names are written in heaven? Or perhaps you will say to them, I have not violated your faith by such charge. But with what confidence will you dare say this? You who say it is a Manichaean notion to confess that all who are born contract from Adam the sin by way of origin, which they confessed and professed, which they learned in the Church of Christ at the time of their beginnings, which they taught the Church of Christ in the time of their honor, they who thought the Holy Spirit gave remission of so many sins to all whom they could baptize, and gave to so many infants remission of original sin only? Let me see what Og says. Og says, I get more church fathers here, HHS, Anthony Rogers, and James White. Yeah, and the thing is that, we got to read these church fathers. Now again, and what this guy was trying to bring out was something that I done said, like, for the past 4 or 5 live streams straight on this subject. Augustine supported infant baptism. It's no secret. But his whole argument wasn't infant baptism. All right? He used the whole argument of infant baptism to say that, why do you think that the early church fathers were so adamant, the people that you say that you follow, why do you think that they were so adamant about baptizing the babies? Because they believed that baptism washed away the stain of original sin. Now, again, there are some Protestants and there are some people who do still hold to that view today. And they're not Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox. But the thing is that when it comes to us as Protestants, we don't make it obligatory. Like, Presbyterians, they believe in infant baptism. I think that Lutherans believe in infant baptism. Your traditional Calvinists believe in infant baptism. But they don't make it obligatory like, oh, you better do that or that baby's going to hell. Now, some people may lean, they may kind of hold that on the inside, but they don't really teach that. And Augustine wasn't teaching that. He wasn't teaching that. He was a little bit more dogmatic. I'll say that. He was a little bit more dogmatic than your modern day Presbyterian or modern day Calvinist. But he wasn't at the fact to where he was just like, well, if you don't do it, then, we just need to kick you out of the church and just anathematize you and just get rid of you. But when it comes to this document that I'm reading, he's making the point that this is one of the factors that we baptize infants, because they have the stain of original sin, and everyone understood that natural man, has the stain of original sin. That's the point that he was trying to get across. So what's happening is that Julian is saying that, well, we don't have any original sin. So then Augustine's arguments is, and this is my argument, especially to the Orthodox Church. If you don't believe in original sin, then why do you baptize your children? Why do you baptize your babies? You see what I'm saying? So when we start to see Orthodox, in particular, baptizing their children, why do you do that? They're already sinless. And a baptism is supposed to wash away the sins, because historically, that is what was taught in the early church, that baptism washes away sins. Then why do you, as an Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox person who you claim to be Eastern Orthodox, why do you baptize your children? What is the point of doing that? And you need to prove that from church history. But that just seems too much like thinking. All right. You know, but that's what happens when you turn your brains on. When you turn your brains on, you really start to think about this stuff. You know. Anyway, let's get back to this. Again, I admonish you. Again, I ask, look at the great number of defenders and doctors of the Catholic Church. See on whom you inflict or serious and so wicked an injury. Or do you think that they are to be despised because they all belong to the Western Church, and I have not mentioned any Eastern bishops among them? This sounds like the same arguments that's brought against us today. He's like, okay, so are we supposed to just hand wave everybody in the Western Church? And he's just like, so you want to hand wave everyone that I don't bring up from the East? But let's see how he responds. What then shall we do, since they are Greek and we Latin? I think that part of the world should suffice for you, in which the Lord wished to crown with his glorious martyrdom, first of his apostles. If you had been willing to listen to the head of that church, Blessed Innocent, so he's just like, okay, well, let's read some of these people in the East. He says, man, if you had been willing to listen to the head of that church, Blessed Innocent, you would already have withdrawn your perilous youth from the Pelagian snares. For what could that holy man answer the African councils except what the Apostolic See and the Roman Church together held from of old? Yet you accuse the successor, Zomissimus, the provocation, because he was unwilling to oppose the apostolic doctrine and the judgment of his predecessor. But I say nothing at this present, lest by the praises of him who condemn you, I should exasperate your mind, which I wish to cure rather than irritate. Consider what you will reply to Saint Innocent, who knows nothing else of this matter except the opinion of those into whose company I introduce you, if that is of any avail. He too is on their side, though later in time, yet higher in place. In regard of freeing wretched infants by the grace of Christ from the original evil, which is contracted from Adam, he holds with them the true and Christian doctrine. He's like, bro, even the people that you claim that you're under, they're holding the same position. And they come to the same conclusions that I'm coming to. He said that Christ, by the laver of his baptism, purged away all the former fault, that is, of the first man, who by free will plunged into the depths, and finally defined that infants, unless they eat the flesh of the Son of Man, can by no means have life. Now remember, that was another thing that we were talking about. Ask these Orthodox dudes, do they give the babies the Eucharist? Because remember, partaking in the Eucharist, that is supposed to cleanse you of your sins as well, because now you got Christ dwelling within your body. So it's like, okay, now if you can't give infants the Eucharist, then how are those infants going to be free of the stain of original sin? So again, this is why we have to ask the Orthodox, why do you baptize babies? Oh, it's tradition, bro. Oh, okay. So what's the tradition? Augustine is laying out the tradition right now with fathers on the east and the west. So what's the tradition? And again, I personally, I don't hold to credo baptism. I'm sorry, pedo baptism. I don't believe that babies should be baptized. That's not my position. All right. I believe in believer's baptism, which is the only one and only true baptism. All right. I don't hold the pedo baptism. I hold a credo baptism. And we can get into that another day. But if you're an Orthodox and you believe in pedo baptism, why are you rejecting the doctrine of original sin? And why do you reject Augustine's breakdown? Well, I know why they reject Augustine, because number one, they've never read Augustine. All right. They just heard bad stuff about Augustine, so therefore they reject Augustine. I'm doing more reading of Augustine than they are. I can probably assure you of that. You're probably getting more Augustine read here than your average Orthodox person, especially the ones online. I don't think that any one of them online are actually taking the time to read this stuff, because you know why? They don't have any arguments against this. You'll never see an argument from an Orthodox person based on what we're reading from Augustine right now. Because Augustine he's chopping down those arguments. These are the same arguments that are being made today. And Augustine, about 1600 years ago, he's already given us an answer right here. 1600 years before we were even born. All right, let's get back to it. Answer him, or rather the Lord himself, who used that bishop as a witness, and tell why the image of God is punished with this capital punishment that is depraved of life, if original sin is not contracted by those who are born. But what will you say, or will you reply? For even if you dare, in the case of blessed innocent, you will not dare call Christ a Manichaean. He's like, yo, I dare you to call Christ a Manichaean. So if we're going by the teachings of Christ, and what I'm teaching is coming from Christ, but you say that I'm a Manichaean, then that means that, quite frankly, you will have to call Christ a Manichaean, right? And I love the way that Augustine is just laying this out. And again, I don't agree with him on the whole infant baptism thing. But at the same time, we can look at this and we can see that his argument is more for the doctrine of original sin than it is for, well, I'm going through all of this just because y'all need to baptize babies. That's what the one guy was trying to say earlier. That Augustine was just trying to force people to baptize their babies, and it had nothing to do with that. Pelagianism has nothing to do with baptizing babies. It has to do with people saying that there's no such thing as original sin. We're all born sinless, which is false. It's anti-Bible. It's a false doctrine. And it's just mind-blowing to see that you have Orthodox, those who say that they left the Protestant church because they wasn't getting church history, and now they're reading the church history. You would think that they would be the ones who would be advocating for original sin more than us. They should be on the front lines fighting this, because the early church positions is for original sin. He continues, thus there is no reason why you should appeal to the Eastern bishops, because they themselves are also Christians, and in both parts of the world, this faith is one faith, for this faith is Christian. And certainly the Western land brought you forth, and the Western church regenerated you. What do you wish to bring to it, which you did not find in it when you came among its members? Or rather, what do you seek to take away from it, which you yourself also received in it? For the original sin you deny, to destruction of other infants at whatever age you were baptized, was itself remitted for you, or at any rate was also remitted. But if it is true, as we have heard, that you were baptized as an infant, then even you, although innocent of personal sins, yet because you were born physically of Adam, contracted the contagion of ancient death by your first birth, and you were conceived in iniquity, and then exercised and exfoliated, so that, rescued from the power of darkness, you might be transferred into the kingdom of Christ. And as he's refuting Julian, he's still giving him the gospel. Still giving him the gospel. Oh, my son, ill-born of Adam, but well reborn in Christ, you attempt to take from your mother the sacraments by which she bore you. Was she Manichaean when she bore you in this way, in which you no longer wish to bear? So, bro, hey, he done brought his mama into this. He done brought his mama into this. He says, bro, was your mama Manichaean? Was she a Manichaean when she had you baptized? That's why we have to ask these questions. You see what I'm saying? So when these Orthodox people show up and they're talking about, oh, there's no original sin. Okay, so why are your babies baptized? Why are you baptized? Why are you baptizing your kids? That's the biggest question. So the way that Augustine is asking these questions, that's the same way that we need to be doing it as well. So if you don't believe in original sin, and you believe that original sin is, in some cases, they'll say that it's unbiblical, it's demonic, it's heresy. Okay, so when your parents baptize you, or whenever you get ready to baptize your children, are you doing this under heretical pretenses? Or are you doing this because you believe, just like your church in the early days believed, that it was a way to wash the stain of original sin away from the infants? That's why you have to ask these questions. And that's why I like to take the time and read through this stuff, because they'll tell you that, well, Augustine believed X, Y, and Z. No. Let's read what Augustine has to say. That's why recently on X, there's a couple of people who've challenged me on the writings of Augustine. And I'm like, you tell me what Augustine meant about original sin. And you tell me exactly where you disagree with Augustine. I'm like, you let me know. And they can't do it. They will not do it. All right. Just like this guy here. Let's see what Mr. Jogs issued. Jogs issued, grace and peace, grace and peace. Welcome to the chat. He says original sin equals original guilt. That's the problem. Augustine pushed original sin based on a mistranslation. All right. So what is the correct translation? What is the definition of original sin? If you can, go ahead and type that in the chat and let us know what original sin is. And you could tell me what Augustine meant by original sin and what the true translation of original guilt is. And show us the difference between that. All right, we're gonna give you some time. We're gonna be here for a little while. I still got a little bit more to read. Uh-oh, dang, my bad. Did y'all not hear that? Did y'all not hear that? All right, let me run it back. Let me run it back. I'm gonna run it all the way back. Run it all the way back. I must have hit my mic by mistake. All right, so let's start back right here where he was talking about his mom. All right. Where were we? We were born Manichaean, which should bore you in a way which you no longer wish. Okay, here we go. All right, so this we're gonna start back right here. And Augustine says, "And do you reproach her manner of bearing, so that you close for others her bowels of mercy, from which you yourself were born? You divide for her the name of her husband, so that for the regeneration of infants he is only Christ, for adults Christ Jesus, because as you know, Jesus means Savior, and this is what you do not wish him to be for infants, since you teach that they have nothing from which he may save them." Right? So he's just like, and this is what I've said. This is what I've said. If you hold or if you deny the doctrine of original sin, like this particular guy here, and I don't want to straw man him, all right? Kind of don't want to straw man him too much. But when people say that they reject the doctrine of original sin, then what is the need of Christ? If you're sinless, right? And I've asked this question before to those who are Orthodox and who deny the concept of original sin. When you're born, you're sinless, right? You're sinless until you commit a sin. And let's just say a lot of people like to use the whole age of accountability, which they believe is around 13. So you mean to tell me that a child is sinless from the time that they're born to maybe around the age of 13 to the time of the age of accountability? And again, I know that everybody doesn't hold to that view, but for a lot of people who hold to the age of accountability view, you think that children are sinless up until that point. So then it goes into the other question that I've been asking people. If you take a child, send them off in the wilderness to a monastery to live by themselves, being taught by the Bible, strictly the Bible, and you keep that child from sin, can that person live a totally sinless life from the time that they're born to the time that they die? And a couple of people have said yes. They say, oh yeah, well that's possible. I even had one lady tell me that she heard that somebody actually did that. She said, yeah, I've heard of people actually living a sinless life. And I'm just like, well, then those people really didn't need Christ. Because if Christ is supposed to be our Savior, and He is the propitiation for our sins, which the Bible clearly lays out, but if you're sinless, then that means Jesus, he really didn't die for you because you were able to keep yourself. So you really didn't need Jesus, right? Let's see what Jogs Issued said. He says, original sin equals inherited corruption. Augustine, inheriting guilt. The difference is nature versus guilt. Well, that's not what I hear from a lot of those who are Orthodox, because they say that we don't even have the nature. Bruh. They say that that even purporting that we have a sin nature that we've inherited from Adam, that's actually false. Now, when you said inherited guilt, and Augustine has already, and I covered this a couple of times, Augustine doesn't mean guilt as in God looks at the person, he looks at you and I and say that you were guilty of eating from that tree of life the same way that Adam was. It's like, no, we're not guilty like that. We're guilty in the manner in which we take on that flesh. That sinful human flesh, which was passed out from Adam. So, but I think that what happens is that people want to compare the argument to apples to oranges. You see what I'm saying? They want to make it an apples to oranges type argument where they're just like, well, I don't like the word guilt. Well, is Augustine using the term guilt the way that we understand guilt today? You know? That's what we're asking. And this is why I'm taking the time to read through this. Because, you know, and again, I don't know if you're new to the channel or not, but, you know, people have been saying that, well, this is what Augustine taught. He taught the guilt and this, that, and the third. And I'm like, okay, well, let's read Augustine, because from what I'm reading and what I've read so far, because I've read two sources. This is one source against Julian considering original sin. And then I read, what else? What's the other one that I read? It was a City of God. I don't think I read that yet. But he did some writings on original sin. And I'm just like, I don't see what you guys are saying. I really don't see what you guys are saying. Grace and peace, brother Henry Roth. Grace and peace. Thank you for showing up. So again, when you guys start to try to make these distinctions and say, well, Augustine believed this and Augustine didn't believe that, I'm like, well, I'm reading him right now, and I don't see what you guys are making. I don't see the claims that you guys are making. So, I mean, I've been on here for a little while. And if you got anything, I can put the link out right now. And if you want to hop on and have a brief conversation, we can do that. Because I'm trying to see how long I've been on so far. I don't know how long I've been on. Maybe about like an hour and 15 minutes. Because I said that this live stream wasn't going to be that long anyway. I was just trying to read at least a couple of chapters. But chapter 4 was kind of lengthy. And chapter 5 seems like it's going to be that much more longer as well. I'm looking at it as right now. Man. Yeah, I may have to do these one at a time. Ooh, wait, look at chapter 5. Chapter 5 is really long. Yeah, now we ain't going to read chapter 5 tonight. I might just have to leave it right here at chapter 4. and then read chapter 5, another time. Because I kind of want these to be like pretty quick. Because I don't want this to end up being like so boring and all of that stuff. When I'm sitting here looking at my Twitter, man, I am getting a whole bunch of interaction on that post that I put up earlier. So, man, getting a lot of interaction on that. Anyway, this is what I'll do. Let me go ahead. Let me try this. I'm going to put out the link. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can put the link out. And I'll see if anyone wants to come on, which I highly doubt. I don't think that anybody's going to come on, especially people who are opposed to this view. I don't think any one of them will come on. I mean, they'll say stuff in the chat, but it just seems like that a lot of times they won't come on. Hold on one second. Let me fix my camera. All right, so I have to take the little thing off my other camera just in case anybody does want to hop on. And I'm gonna put this link out here. And Josiah, you can feel free to come on and we'll have like a quick discussion on this. All right, so you can kind of let me know. Where you're coming from. All right, it's not gonna be a fight, Brother Henry. Not gonna be a fight. Just gonna be a discussion. Just gonna be a discussion. That's all we're gonna do. We just want to have a discussion because that's what I'm about. All right, I'm not about trying to, get a one up or anyone or anything like that. I just want to have these discussions. So, because I don't know, we might be talking past each other. I'm probably thinking that he's saying one thing and he's probably thinking that I'm saying another thing. And, I'd rather for us to really have, just a nice, decent conversation. But, I mean, if he don't show up, then you know what it is. All right. It's just, people just want to say what they got to say in the chat, but they can't really prove what they're saying. They don't have anything to back it up with. Right. And again, I have to keep saying this. This is why I'm bringing this stuff up. This is why I am reading these sources, because they'll tell you that, oh, Augustine believed this and these church fathers believe that. But when we start to read the church fathers, no one is willing to show up and prove that and prove us wrong. So the link is there. He's not responding back in the chat. He ain't in the back. He's not in the back chat. So I think that should tell you something. All right. But anyway, let me go ahead and read some. Let me go ahead and read the poll results so far. Where I'm asking a question in the live stream: is Augustine correct on original sin? So far, 48% of you all say yes, he's consistent with the Bible. 19% of you all say no, he misrepresents the Bible. 14% of you all say he was both correct and incorrect. And 23% of you all say, I am not aware, but I am just listening. Now you are just listening. All right, so let me get ready to get up out of here. And like I said, let's get back to this guy right here. Jogs issued, right? Says nowhere in the Bible do we inherit guilt. Augustine read it into Romans 5:12, in whom all sin, and introduced the idea. But we're sitting here literally reading Augustine, and he won't come up and try to defend what he says. And that's, you're not going to get that. Just understand that you're really not. I'll be surprised if he does click the link and hop on, but I don't think he is. And plus, I'm ready to get off anyway. I'm a little tired. And this is what internet stuff does. This is what being on the internet all the time. Some of these people, they don't go to church. They're always going from live stream to live stream looking for fights. But that's why I'm trying to take my channel in a different direction. To say, hey, let's start taking time to actually read these sources, because I want you guys to be more informed than the next person who's just looking for a fight. You see what I'm saying? There are people out here who are just, they just want to fight. But then when you start to bring out information and you start to bring sources out, then no one wants to talk. Because again, that's just the nature of the internet. And what I'm seeing happening too, there are a lot of people who are becoming more and more interested with having open and honest conversations with topics like these. They want people to start bringing out information. And right now it's not really popular because everybody's kind of still, everyone still kind of wants to go and try to, go head to head and fight with each other in the comments and go on panels and fight and all of that stuff. And sometimes I think it is good for us who do have difference of opinions to, you know, hit the streams like Brother CK's channel and just kind of like, you know, just get it in, right? But you can't do that every day. There needs to be a balance, you know, and that's why every time I have these conversations, and especially when I step in those particular arenas, I try to come prepared, and I start throwing out sources, and some of these folks, you know, they can't deal with it because they haven't read the sources. They're just talking. So, you know, but anyway, man, thank y'all for showing up. I told y'all that this live stream was not going to be that long. And I was planning on being out of here like 9:30. But anyway, for those who are still watching, all right, let me go ahead and cue up my outro. All right, y'all hit that like button, hit that notifications bell, especially if you are new to the channel. And listen, man, I will see you guys next time. Lord willing, peace.